Why are you so tall? Do your knees hurt?
A little bit.
The first thing Jasmine noticed was that her daughter had stopped moving. Alina never stopped moving. Not at breakfast, not in the bath, not during the 3-second prayer she rushed through every night before her head hit the pillow. Movement was simply Alina's factory setting, arms swinging, feet bouncing, mouth running at a frequency that occasionally made Jasmine wonder if silence was something her daughter had simply decided didn't apply to her. But right now, in the middle of Dongsung Elementary's spring showcase, surrounded by children waving handmade lanterns and parents recording everything on phones they'd forget to charge, Alina had gone completely, eerily still. Jasmine followed her daughter's gaze across the courtyard. There was a man standing near the far gate. Korean, tall, dark suit that looked expensive enough to make the other parents unconsciously adjust their posture. He wasn't watching the performances. He wasn't watching anything, really, except Alina. His eyes were fixed on her daughter with an expression Jasmine couldn't immediately name. Not threatening, not predatory, something worse. Recognition. And he was crying. Not dramatically, not in the way that would draw attention. Just the quiet, helpless kind of crying that happens when the body gives up trying to hold something in. His jaw was tight. His hands were at his sides, but there were tears on his face, and he wasn't bothering to wipe them, and he was looking at Alina like she was something he had lost a very long time ago and never expected to find again. Jasmine's stomach dropped 6 floors. She knew that face. She had spent 3 years sleeping next to that face, and 3 more years trying to forget it existed. Kim Seojin hadn't aged the way she'd hoped he would. She'd fantasized about it in the early days, imagined him bloated, gray, defeated. Instead, he looked like time had sharpened him. Leaner, quieter. The kind of man who had learned to contain himself so completely that his stillness felt almost architectural. She hated that. Alina tugged her sleeve without looking away from him. "Mommy, I see him. Why is he crying?" Jasmine very carefully set her cup of barley tea down on the table beside her. "I don't know, baby." That was the first lie she'd told her daughter in 6 years. It wouldn't be the last one today. She had not always been a woman who lied. That was the thing people didn't understand about Jasmine Walker, the version of her that existed now, in this 4th-floor apartment in Haiua with the leaky bathroom faucet and the herb garden on the windowsill and the 6-year-old who had strong opinions about everything including the correct way to fold napkins. People saw the sharp tongue and the steady eyes and assumed she had always been like this. Assured, armored. Someone who moved through the world like she had already survived the worst of it and simply didn't have time to be afraid anymore. The truth was she had learned all of it. She had learned it in the 18 months after Kim Seojin signed the divorce papers and handed them to her through an intermediary, because he couldn't even be bothered to look at her face when he ended her life. She had learned it while sitting in a clinic in Itaewon, alone, discovering that the nausea she'd been dismissing as grief was actually a 6-week-old reason to keep getting out of bed. She had learned it while calling her mother in Atlanta and crying so hard she couldn't get the words out, and her mother had simply stayed on the line for 45 minutes without saying anything at all, which was somehow the most loving thing anyone had ever done for her. She had learned all of it. And then she had built a life so good, it almost made the before feel like a story that had happened to someone else. If this story already has you feeling something, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Subscribe to Afro Soul Diaries by D. New stories every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. The apartment on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like sesame oil and somebody's grandmother's kimchi had become, against all reasonable odds, home. Jasmine ran a small translation consultancy out of the 2nd bedroom, Korean to English, English to Korean, occasional French, when the client was willing to pay her premium rate, which she had set specifically to discourage people who weren't serious. She worked 4 days a week and spent Friday afternoons doing absolutely nothing, which T. Wu had once pointed out was not actually nothing, because she spent it reorganizing things that didn't need reorganizing. You alphabetized the spice rack, he'd said, leaning against the kitchen doorframe with that infuriating expression he had, the one that was technically a smile, but functioned more like a commentary on her entire personality. I can find things faster now. You couldn't find the comin' before. I can find it faster. Jasmine, it's comin'. You find it by smelling it. Yoon Tiwoo, I need you to go stand somewhere else. He had laughed, which was the thing about him that had broken down her walls before she even realized they were being dismantled. He laughed easily, genuinely, without calculation. It was the most disarming thing about a man who was, by most external measures, extremely disarmable. 34, architect, the kind of face that made baristas forget to charge him, with enough self-awareness to be funny about all of it. He had appeared in her life 16 months ago through the absolutely unromantic mechanism of being her neighbor. He'd moved into 4B carrying a plant that looked deeply unhappy and introduced himself by saying, "I'm Ti-woo. My moving company lost my sofa. Can I use your floor?" She had said no. He had sat in the hallway until she took pity on him and lent him a blanket, which he returned the next morning laundered and folded, with a container of dweeji gukbap she hadn't asked for. Alina had decided she liked him within approximately 4 minutes of meeting him. Jasmine had held out for 6 weeks, which she considered a personal record. He was sitting at her kitchen table when she and Alina came through the door that evening, laptop open, reading glasses on, a cup of tea he'd made himself from her cabinet without asking, because that had stopped being a boundary somewhere around month 3 and was now simply a fact of their shared existence. He looked up when Alina dropped her lantern on the floor and didn't pick it up. He took off the glasses. "Hey, how was the showcase?" Then he looked at Jasmine. "What happened?" "Nothing happened." "You have your nothing happened face." "I don't have a nothing happened face." "It's like your regular face, but approximately 12% more controlled." Alina climbed onto the chair next to him, reached over, and stole a piece of the tangerine he'd been eating. "There was a tall man," she announced. "He was crying and looking at me. Mommy knew him, but she said she didn't." Ti-woo looked at Jasmine. Jasmine looked at the ceiling. "Alina, what you did?" "Thank you, sweetheart. Please go wash your hands." "They're not dirty." "They touched that lantern you dropped on the floor that you still haven't picked up." Alina considered this, decided it was logically airtight, and slid off the chair. Her footsteps disappeared down the hall. The bathroom tap ran, and then Ti-woo folded his glasses and set them on the table and said nothing, because he had learned that the fastest way to get Jasmine to talk was to stop asking her to. She sat down. It was Seojun. The kitchen went very quiet. "He was at Alina's school showcase," she said, her voice tight, standing at the gate, crying, looking at her. Ti-woo reached across the table, his fingers lightly brushing hers in a reassuring, grounded touch. "Okay," he said softly, his voice a steady anchor. "We can handle him, but how did he even know to be there?" "That," Jasmine said, "is the question, isn't it?" She didn't sleep. This was not unusual for Jasmine in the general sense. She was a woman who processed things horizontally at 2 a.m. with the lamp off and the ceiling fan on and her brain moving at full speed. But this particular sleeplessness had a different quality to it. Less anxiety, more arithmetic. She kept running the numbers. Alina was 6. She'd been pregnant when Kim Seojun signed the papers and hadn't known it yet. She had left Seoul and gone to Busan for 8 months, then come back, because she refused to let him have the city and built everything here in Haeju, away from the Gangnam circles he moved in, away from the social architecture of the life they'd had together. She had told no one from that world where she was. Not his family, not the mutual friends who had quietly dissolved after the divorce, not the publicist who had called twice to ask if she'd be signing an NDA. She hadn't signed the NDA. That had been, she suspected, a mistake, not morally, strategically. The publicist's persistence had suggested they were more afraid of what she knew than she'd realized at the time. But none of that explained how Seojun had found the school. Alina was registered under Walker, Jasmine's name. She had been meticulous about that, not out of spite, though she wouldn't have apologized for spite, but because she'd known, at some cellular level, that the Kim name would eventually become complicated in ways she didn't want her daughter caught in. So how had he found them? She sat up at 3 a.m. and opened her laptop. Kim Seojan's professional footprint was, as always, enormous and carefully curated. Construction empire, charitable foundation, the kind of civic presence that made people forget he was not, in fact, a politician. She scrolled past the press releases and the profile pieces and stopped on a photograph from a gala 3 months ago. He was standing with a woman. Park Se-yeon, the woman he had chosen instead. Jasmine studied the photograph for longer than was good for her. Se-yeon looked exactly the same, a particular kind of polish that required effort disguised as effortlessness, the kind of woman who entered rooms and made other women immediately recalculate. She was smiling in the photograph. Seojan was not. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking slightly to the left of it, with the expression of a man attending his own sentencing hearing. Jasmine closed the laptop. He found her the next day. Not at home. At the cafe on the corner of Dihangno that she used as a second office when she needed to escape the apartment. The one with the good light and the owner who had never once asked her a personal question, which was rare and precious in a neighborhood this size. She was on her second Americano and a client contract when the chair across from her was pulled out and Kim Seojan sat down in it. Her hand did not shake. She was proud of that. "You have 3 seconds," she said, without looking up from the contract, "to explain how you knew I'd be here. I've been trying to find you for 8 months. That's not an explanation. That's a confession of stalking. I hired a private investigator." She looked up. He looked terrible, actually. Up close and in daylight, without the distance of a school courtyard and 6 years of practiced indifference between them, she could see what the photographs hadn't shown. The shadows under his eyes, the particular quality of a man who had not been sleeping for reasons that weren't work. She cataloged this and felt nothing, or told herself that. "You hired someone to find me." "Yes. And it took 8 months. You were careful." "I was busy," she said, "building a life you're about to disrupt. What do you want, Seojan?" He didn't answer immediately. He had never been a man who spoke before he was ready, which was one of the things she had loved about him, and one of the things that had made her feel, in the last year of their marriage, like she was constantly knocking on a door that no one was going to answer. "I need to tell you something," he said finally, "and I need you to hear all of it before you say anything. I don't make promises under duress." "Jasmine." Something about the way he said her name, not soft exactly, more like careful, like he was handling something that might break. She set the contract down. "You have 5 minutes," she said, "starting now. Drop a comment right now, Team T-Woo or Team Seojan. Before you answer, remember, one of them showed up, the other one came back. There's a difference. Afro Soul Diaries by D." What he told her took longer than 5 minutes. She didn't stop him. The version of events she had lived through, the version she had reconstructed in Busan with her mother's voice on the phone and her own memory as the only evidence she had always had a gap in it, a seam that didn't lie flat. She had known it was there. She had known that something about the accusation, about the speed with which everything had collapsed, about the particular way Seojan's face had closed off like a shutter coming down, something had never fully made sense. She had filed that knowledge away. Because the alternative, that it had been worse than she knew, that the machinery of what happened to her had been larger and more deliberate than one man's failure of faith, was a thought she hadn't had the resources to survive in the years when she was trying to simply keep herself functional. Now she sat across from him in a cafe on Dihangno while rain started against the windows, and let him tell her what his investigator had found 8 months ago. The photographs that had been sent to him anonymously 2 weeks before he signed the papers, the ones that had shown her, apparently, with another man, the photographs that had broken something in him that his pride had refused to examine too closely. the photographs that had been fabricated. She kept her face still. He told her about the metadata, about the digital forensics his investigator had pulled, about the timestamps that didn't match and the location data that contradicted itself, about the witness who had initially corroborated the story and then, 8 months ago, contacted his legal team privately with a very different account of events. The witness had been paid by Park Se-in. Jasmine heard that and felt something move through her that wasn't quite any emotion she had a clean word for. Not shock. She had been turning that theory over in her mind for 6 years, the way you turn a stone over without wanting to look at what's underneath. Not relief, either, because the damage had been done, and the truth arriving late didn't reverse it. Something more like the sensation of having a bone set, painful, necessary, and something that had been wrong for a very long time finally aligned correctly. She fabricated the evidence, Jasmine said. Yes. She paid someone to say they'd seen me. Yes. And you believed it. The weight of that sentence landed between them. He didn't look away from it. Yes, he said, I believed it. Outside, the rain picked up. A group of university students ran past the window with their jackets over their heads. The cafe owner turned on the overhead lights. The world continued, unhelpfully, as normal. Where is she now? Jasmine asked. Seoul, we have been, he paused. The pause was very precise, very controlled. The arrangement ended 14 months ago. Arrangement, she repeated. It was never what I wanted. That's fascinating. I didn't ask what you wanted. He was quiet. She picked up her Americano, which had gone cold, and drank it anyway. Her hand was still not shaking. She made a small, private note of this. Seojun, the child at the school. She watched his face. She looks like you, Jasmine said. I know you noticed, that's why you were crying. His jaw tightened, just slightly, just enough. Is she? Her name is Alina, Jasmine said. She is 6 years old. She has your nose, your hair, and your stubbornness, and absolutely no volume control. And she has never once in her life asked about her father because I told her that some families are built differently and that hers was whole. She set the cup down. Don't make me have lied to her about that. The next 72 hours were not peaceful. Ti-woo, to his considerable credit, did not pretend they were. He came over that evening with ingredients for a meal that would take an hour to make, which was his method of ensuring he'd be present long enough to actually be useful. And Alina immediately recruited him as her assistant in building something out of cardboard boxes that she was calling a fortress, but was structurally more of a philosophical statement. Does the fortress need a gate? He asked. No. For security reasons. Because gates are how people get in, Alina said, with the calm certainty of a person who had arrived at this conclusion through hard experience despite being 6 years old. Ti-woo looked at Jasmine over the top of the cardboard structure. She gave him nothing. She was standing at the counter pretending to read something while actually watching her daughter's hands move, thinking about bone structure and eye shape, and the particular way Alina's mouth went flat when she was concentrating, which was a mouth she had looked at every day for 6 years and which was, she now allowed herself to fully admit, not her mouth. After dinner and after Alina was asleep, she told him everything. He listened without interrupting, which was the thing about Ti-woo that she had not expected and still, sometimes, didn't quite know what to do with. He did not fill silences with reassurance. He let them exist until they contained something real. She fabricated all of it, Jasmine said. The photos, the witness, the timeline, all of it. To get Seojun. To keep him. She'd been in love with him before I arrived. I didn't know that when I married him. Maybe I should have looked harder, she paused. Maybe he should have. Ti-woo was quiet for a moment. What does he want now? He says he wants to make it right. And what does making it right look like, specifically? She turned to look at him. He was sitting with his forearms on his knees, and his expression was the most careful she had seen on him, not closed, not performing, just carefully, deliberately open, making room. I don't know yet, she said honestly. Does Alina know? No. Are you going to tell her? I don't know that either. Tiwoo nodded slowly, then stood up, smoothing down his shirt. He stepped into her space. He gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his thumb lingering on her cheek for a heartbeat. Hey, he murmured. Figure out what you need to figure out with him, but don't look at me like I'm someone you think is going to change. I'm not going anywhere, Walker. You're stuck with me. He flashed her a quick, devastating little smirk. You should sleep. I'll let myself out. He reached out and touched her hand briefly, just for a moment. Then he stood up, found his jacket, and left. She sat in the dark kitchen for a long time after the door clicked shut. Like this video, if you've ever had to rebuild from something that wasn't your fault, because some stories need to be told out loud. Park Se-yeon called her. That was the part Jasmine hadn't anticipated. She had been waiting for escalation, had told herself to expect it, had prepared the particular quality of stillness that had served her well in crisis, but she'd assumed it would come through Seojun somehow. A lawyer, an intermediary, not a direct call to her personal number, which Se-yeon should not have had. The fact that she had it told Jasmine several things at once. She answered, I've been wondering when you do this, she said. Silence, then, you should be careful. Se-yeon's voice was exactly as Jasmine had constructed it in her imagination, controlled, musical, the kind of voice that sounded like it was always half smiling. 6 years ago, she had heard that voice at events and across rooms, and once, memorably, on the other end of a phone, she'd accidentally answered that was meant for Seojun. She had told herself it meant nothing. The voice, the frequency of contact. Is that a warning or a threat? Jasmine asked pleasantly. You've been talking to Seojun. He came to talk to me. There's a difference. You know about differences. You seem very invested in them. You don't understand the situation. I'm a professional translator, Jasmine said. Understanding complicated things is my literal job. Speak in a language you think you can express yourself with. Whatever he told you is supported by forensic evidence, a recanting witness, and the fact that I know what I did and did not do during my own marriage. She paused. Se-yeon, I want you to hear me clearly. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not interested in your version of events. And if you call this number again, I'll forward it to Seojun's legal team along with the metadata on those photographs that you apparently forgot would eventually be findable. She hung up. Then she sat down on the floor of her bathroom, put her head against the cool tile wall, and breathed very carefully for approximately 2 minutes. Then she got up, washed her face, and called Tiwoo. He picked up on the first ring. She called me, Jasmine said. I'm on my way. You don't have to. Jasmine, I'm on my way. He brought snacks. This was objectively unnecessary and exactly right. They sat at the kitchen table with the lamp on low. He set everything on the counter, and Alina, who had apparently been waiting behind the door, materialized instantly and began conducting an unsolicited inventory of the bags. You got the wrong chips, she said. Those are the right chips. These are spicy. You like spicy. I like a little spicy. These are too spicy. How do you know? You haven't tried them. Alina held the bag at arm's length and looked at it with profound suspicion. I can tell by the color. Tiwoo looked at Jasmine. Jasmine looked at the ceiling. This was not a battle she was equipped to referee tonight. 20 minutes later, somehow, Tiwoo was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with Alina beside him, both of them looking at a drawing she'd made that appeared to be a dragon wearing a business suit. He can't pay taxes, Alina said. He doesn't have pockets. He could carry a briefcase. Dragons don't carry briefcases. This one does. He's a professional. He breathes fire. He would burn the briefcase. He keeps his documents digital. Alina stared at him. You're not taking this seriously. I'm extremely serious, Tiwoo said. I think the dragon is a very responsible taxpayer and he deserves more credit. The dragon, Alina said, with the patience of someone explaining something to a particularly slow adult, does not exist. He cannot pay taxes. This is a drawing. Then why did you draw him a briefcase? Alina looked at the drawing, then at Ti-woo, then back at the drawing. I don't know, she said. Exactly, Ti-woo said. Art is complicated. Jasmine was standing in the kitchen doorway. She hadn't moved toward the table yet. She hadn't said anything. She was just standing there watching her daughter, and this man argue with total sincerity about the tax obligations of a fictional fire-breathing creature in a suit. And something in her chest did a thing she didn't have a clean word for. Not romantic, not sentimental, something quieter and more foundational than either of those. This was what Seiyin had spent 6 years trying to prevent her from having. Not Seojin. This. She went back to the kitchen table and sat down, and when Ti-woo eventually joined her, she was ready to talk. Alina was asleep, and he listened to the phone call and then said, "She's panicking," which was the same conclusion Jasmine had reached and found oddly comforting to hear from someone else. The witness recanted, Jasmine said. That's what collapsed it. Everything she built for 6 years is starting to unravel because one person finally decided the money wasn't worth it. Do you know why they recanted? Seojin's investigator found something on Seiyin, something she was using to control people. The witness was being blackmailed. She rubbed her eyes. It goes deeper than I thought. This wasn't just about wanting a man. This was she had a system. A system for keeping everything in place. The right people positioned, the right pressure applied. She's been maintaining this for 6 years. She looked at him. She knew I was back in Seoul. She's known for longer than Seojin did. That's how she knew to call me. Ti-woo absorbed this. She's been watching you, he said. It wasn't a question. She's been watching me. Something shifted in his face. Not panic. Something quieter and considerably more serious. What are you going to do? He said. I'm going to get ahead of it, Jasmine said. I'm going to go to Seojin's legal team first. Give them everything I have, the call, the things she said, whatever I can document. If she's going to move, I want to have moved first. Ti-woo nodded. Then he said carefully, and Seojin. She held his gaze. He's Alina's father, she said. Whatever I feel about what happened, she has the right to know him. I'm not going to take that from her. That's not what I was asking about. I know, she said. I'm not ready to answer the other question yet. He accepted this with the grace she had come to rely on more than she'd meant to. He refilled her tea without asking. He stayed until the lamp ran out of warmth and the street outside went quiet, and he did not press her for anything, and she was both grateful for this and aware that his patience had a weight she hadn't been honest enough to name yet. This is where it gets complicated. Subscribe to Afro Soul Diaries by D before we go further. You're going to want to be here for what happens next. The meeting happened 3 days later. Jasmine had spent those 3 days doing what she did best, which was processing things in motion rather than stillness, working, picking up Alina from school, cooking meals she ate standing up over the sink, running at 6 a.m. along the quieter streets of Haiwa until her lungs burned and her mind, briefly, cleared. She had also, in the middle of the second night, told Alina the beginning of the truth. Not all of it, not yet, but she had sat on the edge of her daughter's bed in the blue dark and said, "You know the man from your school showcase, the tall one." And Alina, who was allegedly asleep and obviously wasn't, had said, "The crying man." And Jasmine had said, "Yes. He might be someone important to our family. I'm still figuring it out, but I wanted to tell you before anything else happened." And Alina had said, "Is he nice?" And Jasmine had said, "I'm still figuring that out too." And Alina had said, "Okay," with the remarkable pragmatism of a 6-year-old who trusts that her mother will sort things out, which was maybe the most devastating thing anyone had said to Jasmine in recent memory. She brought Ti-woo with her to meet Seojin. Not as a statement, not as a shield, because he had offered and she had said yes, and that had felt like enough reason. Seojin's Seoul office was an exercise in billionaire minimalism. He was standing when they walked in. His eyes snapped to Ti-woo, assessing him for 2 long, heavy seconds. Ti-woo, to his eternal credit, didn't shrink under the gaze. He offered a polite nod, took took the chair beside Jasmine and settled into it with the easy confidence of a man who didn't feel the need to compete for space. He said nothing. He didn't have to. Jasmine was aware of him beside her the entire time, steady, present, entirely himself. Siajan then looked at Jasmine, and she watched him understand the geometry of the situation with the sharp intelligence that had always been one of his most uncomfortable qualities. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I'm not here to reconcile," Jasmine said. "I'm here to figure out what happens next, practically, for Alina." He nodded once. They sat. Ti-Woo, to his eternal credit, said nothing and took up the minimum possible amount of physical space, which was no small feat for a man of his height. He simply existed in the room as a quiet, steady fact, and Jasmine was aware of this in her peripheral vision the entire time and found it, against all probability, helpful. "I want to meet her," Siajan said. "I know you do. I want to, I don't know what the right word is, repair, what I can repair." "You can't repair 6 years." "I know. You can start somewhere else." She folded her hands on the table. "My daughter gets to decide how much of a relationship she wants with you. Not you, not me, her. You don't show up with gifts or gestures. You show up as a person and you let her figure out what she thinks of you. Can you do that?" He was quiet for a moment. "She sounds like you," he said. "She's better than me," Jasmine said. "Most days." Something moved across his face, not quite a smile, but adjacent to one. The first human expression she'd seen from him that wasn't saturated with regret, and it was strange and disorienting to recognize in it something she had once loved. She looked away. Sayan's next move came on a Thursday. A journalist, a story about to drop, something about Jasmine's business, the implication being financial impropriety, thin and sourceless, but designed to create enough noise that it would require response. Siajan's legal team intercepted it before it published. This was the moment Jasmine understood the full shape of what Sayan had been doing all along, not just the original lie, but the ongoing maintenance of it, the structure she'd built to protect herself. 6 years of architecture, the kind of effort that required genuine fear as its foundation. She had been afraid Jasmine would come back. She had been right to be. The legal team had by then assembled enough, the forensic evidence on the photographs, the witness statement, the documented payments. The phone call Jasmine had recorded on the third ring because she was, after all, a woman who processed things in motion. The journalist was given the full counter-documentation. The story didn't run. Instead, another story ran. Not one anyone had planned exactly, but the witness had spoken to someone else, a colleague, a friend, the way secrets travel when they're tired of being kept, and that someone else had a platform and an irritation with Park Sayan that predated any of this. And by Friday afternoon, the outline of the truth had begun moving through the circles where it mattered most. Jasmine watched it happen from her kitchen window with her second cup of tea. Alina was at school, Ti-Woo was at his office, the apartment was very quiet. She thought about the version of herself who had sat in a clinic in Itaewon alone and tried to understand what she had done wrong. She thought about the 18 months of reconstruction. She thought about the specific quality of pride required to return to a city that had seen you broken and build something good in it anyway. She thought about Alina asking in the dark, "Is he nice?" She didn't have a clean answer to that yet. She suspected she wouldn't for a long time. Siajan was not a villain. She had never been able to entirely cast him as one, which had complicated her grief considerably. He was a man who had failed her in a specific and devastating way, who had had something to protect and had chosen pride over truth. He was also, she could now see, a man who had been paying for it. Whether that payment was sufficient was a calculation she reserved the right to make slowly. Comment below, what do you think Alina says the first time she really talks to Siajan? I need to know what you're thinking. The first meeting between Alina and Siajan happened on a Saturday. Jasmine had arranged it at the park near their building, public, open, her territory. Ti-Woo was not there. She had thought carefully about that. This was not a moment that needed an audience, even a kind one. Siajan arrived before them. He was sitting on a bench near the fountain, and when Alina came through the gate and saw him, she stopped. Jasmine felt her daughter's hand tighten in hers. "That's him," Alina said. "Yes. He's still tall." "He is." Alina considered him from a distance with the frank, assessing gaze she applied to everything, her food, her art projects, strangers at bus stops. Then she looked up at Jasmine. "Does he know who I am?" Jasmine crouched to her level. "Yes, baby, he does." Alina absorbed this. Something moved through her small face, not the emotion Jasmine had braced for, not tears or confusion or the kind of betrayal a child produces entirely by accident. Something more contained, more careful. "Okay," she said, and walked toward him. Jasmine stayed where she was. She watched her daughter approach the bench, watched Siaja notice her from 15 feet away and go very still, watched Alina stop in front of him with her chin up and her hands in her jacket pockets. She couldn't hear the exchange. She didn't need to. She could see Alina talking. She could see Siajan listening with his whole body, bent slightly forward, hands clasped, that particular quality of attention that she recognized and had not expected to recognize. The same attention she had once been the recipient of and had never entirely stopped missing. She could see the exact moment Alina said something unexpected, because Siajan's expression fractured briefly, so quickly she almost missed it, and then composed itself. Then Alina sat down next to him. Not close, but next to him. Jasmine exhaled. Walking home, Alina was quieter than usual, which required adjustment. "What did you say to him?" Jasmine asked, not pushing, offering the question like a door left open. "I asked him why he waited so long." Jasmine's chest did something complicated. "What did he say?" Alina thought about it. "He said he didn't know about me, and that when he found out he came as fast as he could." She scuffed her shoe against the pavement. "Is that true?" "I think it's the part of the truth he understands right now," Jasmine said carefully. Alina processed this. "His knees hurt," she said finally. "What?" "He said they do. I asked because he's very tall and Auntie Grace said tall people have knee problems." She looked up. "He said he runs anyway." Jasmine had absolutely no framework for what she felt at that piece of information. "That's very interesting, Alina." "He seems sad," Alina said. "Not cry-sad, the kind of sad that's been there a long time." "How do you know the difference?" "Because you have it sometimes too," her daughter said, "and you're not a crier either." Jasmine stopped walking. Alina was already 5 steps ahead, navigating a pile of leaves with the focused attention she reserved for things that required precise foot placement. She didn't look back. Jasmine started walking again. Tiwoo was in the hallway when they got back. Not waiting in the specific sense, he was in his own doorway, keys in hand, technically in the process of leaving. But he looked at Jasmine's face when she came off the elevator, and something in his own face shifted to something she didn't entirely have a word for. Alina said, "Tiwoo, the tall man has knee pain." "That's medically relevant," he said. "How was it?" "Fine," Alina said, and disappeared through their door, which left Jasmine in the hallway with him, the door ajar. The light from inside spilling out across the floor. "How was it?" he asked again, softer. "She sat next to him," Jasmine said. He nodded. "That's good," he said. "That's the right thing for her." She looked at him. Tiwoo had the specific gift of meaning what he said, not what he wanted to be saying, not what was strategic, but what he actually believed. She had cataloged this about him over 16 months. He had never, not once, said something to her designed to make her choose him. He had simply been present and honest and quietly, thoroughly in it. "I don't know what I want," she said. "I know. I'm not saying that to hurt you. I know that too. I need time that I don't entirely have to figure it out." "Jasmine." He stepped closer, taking her chin gently between his fingers and lifting her gaze to meet his eyes. I'm not going anywhere. I haven't been going anywhere. That's not going to change because he showed up. He tilted his head slightly. He's Alina's father, that's real. Whatever else is or isn't real, that part is. Figure out what you need to figure out. And honestly, I'm entirely too charming to lose to an ex-husband, no matter how tall he is. Jasmine let out a breathless, disbelieved laugh. If I could choose when I fell for you, I would have chosen a better time. His smile softened into something deeply intimate. Sweetheart, there's no bad time to fall for me, but I appreciate the confession. Good thing I'm patient. The choice didn't come in a single moment. That was the thing she hadn't understood when she was younger, when she'd believed that clarity arrived like weather, sudden and total, changing everything at once. She had spent 6 years waiting for her grief to resolve into something clean. She had learned instead that rebuilding happened in accumulation. Small decisions, repeated. A direction rather than a destination. The legal process against Sayin moved forward without requiring much from Jasmine except documentation, which she provided with the precision of a woman who had spent her career organizing language into clean, irrefutable form. The witness's statement was on record. The forensic evidence was filed. The machinery of consequence, delayed by 6 years and a woman's careful engineering, was now running in the direction it should have run in the beginning. Siajan did not ask Jasmine for anything. This surprised her. She had braced for the request, the hope made explicit, the attempt at reconstruction, the proposal of some future she was meant to consider. Instead, he sent a brief message through his attorney asking if he might bring Alina a birthday gift when the time came, and whether the park would be acceptable, and whether she would prefer he coordinate through the legal team or directly. She texted him directly. Not concession, pragmatism. Alina's life would be better if this was not administered through lawyers. He replied in under a minute with a simple acknowledgement and nothing more. She found herself sitting with that for a while. A month after the showcase, on a Sunday morning with the windows open and Alina's cartoons running in the background, and a cup of tea she'd actually made properly for once, Ti-woo knocked on her door. She opened it. He was holding a plant. It was drooping slightly, one leaf already gone. I bought you a plant, he said. She stared at it. It looks like it's fighting for its life, Ti-woo. I was walking past the market and I saw it, and I thought you'd either take excellent care of it or you'd kill it inside a week. And either way it would tell me exactly where your head is, at the moment. She looked at him. That is the strangest. You're going to take care of it, he said. I know you are because that's what you do. He shrugged. I'm just saying it seemed relevant. She took the plant. It was, on closer inspection, a small olive tree, barely potted, technically still alive. This is a metaphor, she said. Absolutely not, it's a plant. Ti-woo. It requires indirect sunlight and very little water. I printed out a care guide because I know you love documentation. You are ridiculous, she murmured, but the warmth blooming in her chest was undeniable. She stepped back from the door. He came in. Alina appeared from the living room, saw the plant, and said, Is it dying? No, Jasmine said. It looks like it's dying. It's not, it's resting. Plants don't rest. Alina. What, Ti-woo, does the plant rest? The plant, Ti-woo said, is fine. It just needs someone to believe in it. Alina looked at him, looked at the plant, looked at her mother. You too, she said, with the exhausted authority of a person who has been managing adults her entire life, are very weird. She went back to her cartoons. Jasmine set the plant on the windowsill, the one that got the best light in the whole apartment, the one she'd kept empty because she'd never found the right thing for it. Then she turned around. Ti-woo was watching her with his hands in his pockets, and that particular quality of patience that had taken her 16 months to fully understand wasn't performance. It was simply who he was. I'm not back to where I started, she said. No. I'm not the woman he married. I'm not the woman who left. I'm not even who I was when you moved in. I know. She's going to want to know him properly over time. She should, he said. He's her father. That will be part of our life now. Okay. She looked at him. You make things look very easy, she said. Nothing about this is easy, he said. I'm just not going to make it harder. She crossed the room. She didn't know, standing there, exactly what she was choosing. She suspected she wouldn't know for a while. The clarity she'd been waiting for still hadn't arrived in any single, clean moment, and she was beginning to think it wasn't going to. There would be more complications. Sayan's legal proceedings. Alina's questions as she got older and understood more. The strange arithmetic of Seojeon existing at the edges of a life she'd built in his absence. None of that was resolved. But Ti-woo was standing in her kitchen holding a care guide for an olive tree, and her daughter was watching cartoons in the next room, and the window was open, and the light was good, and it was Sunday. She put her hand against his chest. He covered it with his. Don't make me regret the plant, she said. He smiled. The plant will outlive us both. From the living room, without looking up from her cartoons, Alina said, I heard that. I'll take care of the plant when you're both old and can't. Jasmine laughed. Really laughed. She stepped closer, the lingering tension of the past few weeks finally melting away, replaced by something much warmer. She reached out, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt as she slowly pulled him down to her level. Her eyes locked onto his, a subtle, knowing smile playing on her lips as she leaned in and whispered against his ear. Alina is visiting Seojeon tomorrow. We'll have the house to ourselves. Ti-woo didn't even blink. His gaze darkened with a sudden, intense heat as his hand moved from her waist up to the back of her neck, his thumb tracing her jawline to keep her eyes locked on his. Careful, Jasmine, he murmured. You play with fire like that, and I might just show you exactly what I'm going to do to you the second this house is empty. Jasmine's only response was a slow smile as she held his gaze. Ti-woo leaned down to press a soft kiss to her jawline before he stepped back to head into the kitchen. I'll make us some tea, he said. Jasmine watched him walk away, a deep sense of relief washing over her. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. She turned toward the coffee table to pick up her mug, but stopped when she noticed Ti-woo's phone resting face up on the glass surface. The screen of his phone lights up with a silent text notification from an unsaved number. Jasmine glances down at it. The message reads, Subject is compliant. The asset will be delivered by the end of the week as planned. Jasmine's eyes widen slightly. She instinctively reaches her hand out toward the device. But before her fingers can reach, another hand smoothly slides into the frame from the side, effortlessly picking up the phone right before she can reach it. Jasmine blinks, snapping her head up. Ti-woo is standing right there, having stepped back into the room without making a sound. His expression is perfectly calm, but for a split second, his usual warm eyes look completely cold and sharp. He slips the phone into his pocket and melts into that effortless, handsome smile. Ready for that tea, beautiful, he said to her. You guys, is our favorite neighbor actually the protector we think he is, or has Jasmine walked straight into a whole new trap? I need to know your wildest theories right now. Drop them in the comments below. Is Ti-woo a villain or something else entirely? If you're ready for part 2, smash that like button, subscribe to the Afro Diaries by D, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the absolute chaos that is coming in part 2. Thank you so much for watching. I'm D, and I'll see you guys in the next one, if Jasmine survives it.